Hi, good afternoon, good morning. I'm Valerie Milano, the editor of the Hollywood Times, and I'm so glad that I have these guests this morning. I'm in Phoenix right now, but we're usually in Hollywood, so we're back and forth. But they're going to introduce themselves. So thank you so much for joining us, gentlemen.
Thank you for having us. My name is Brian Wallace. I'm one of the co-producers of World Twistories, our TV pilot that's going up at Dances with Films. I wrote and directed the sketch and helped to bring these other three gentlemen together into the project. And I'm in Los Angeles.
And I am Paul Longley. As you can tell from my accent, I'm not from these parts. I'm actually from a little place called London, which is where World Twistories is set. I am the host of World Twistories. And yes, it's very exciting to be here. Thank you so much for having us. We are very excited to be speaking to you guys.
Oh, I'm James Longley, Paul's brother, also from London, and I am the director and producer and camera DOP for the London side of the project.
And I am Matt Mitchell. I am also in Los Angeles. Extremely thrilled to be with Dances with Wolves this year. And I am one of the co-producers.
Wolves. I love it.
He loves Kevin Costner, so I mean, he did.
And I'm one of the co-producers, and I'm the cinematographer of the sketch.
Great. And the Longley guys, how are you related?
Brothers. We share the same parents.
Yes, that would make you brothers. Wonderful. Okay, so we're talking about a great short that I enjoyed, World Twistories, and it blends sketch, comedy, and scholarly research to pioneer the docu-comedy genre. This is a lighthearted series that explores eccentric historical figures and their unconventional ideas. Each episode features true stories, meticulously researched and hosted by the effortlessly charming Paul Longley. This film is very much steeped in the traditions of British comedy with consistently peculiar characters and settings. And of course, British comedy has produced some of the most renowned comedians and characters in the world. This is for a rather bold concept, mixing actual scholarly research with vignette played for laughs. Is there a danger of losing the research among the slapstick, or does the comedy help legitimize the research, so to speak, like make it more palatable for the masses? What do you think about that?
That's a really good question. I hadn't thought about that. I think that the way I view it is that it's an equal balance, because there are a lot of shows right now that are historically centered, but the host kind of lampoons the scholar. And so what we're doing with the sketch is we're putting a lot of the comedy into that bucket so that the scholar, the historian, the academic can add context to it, because all of the things that we see in each episode actually happened. These people really existed. Everything is true. And so if it's just played for laughs the whole way through, I think that it can get a little bit lopsided. So this is what I think we need for a balance.
Yeah, it creates context. I think if you're talking about events that are much more well-known, for example, historical events that everyone knows inside out, you can play completely for laughs, and maybe you don't need the historical element and the fact-finding behind it. I think when you're talking about the beauty of World Twistories is we're talking about very niche parts of history that people won't know about. So with that, the history itself is really funny. It is really interesting anyway. And then what you're doing is you're just creating even more fun from that. If you just had the sketch on its own and you had no context as to the world and what was the time period at the time, what was the landscape in that period of history, I think the comedy gets lost. And I think it would seem too absurd. I think you need to ground it down, and having an expert and understanding exactly that period of history, I think really makes it quite unique.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, so in this pilot episode about the origins of the coffee shop, the serious potion being the research, it featured accents which are more heavily British. What one might call scholarly, and the reenactments are less so. But even the scholarly portion has humorous overtones, and the reenactment, while played for laughs, delivers the factual information. There's a fine line here, isn't it? Can you talk about that?
Sure. I think one of the things that we were aiming to really capture with this is the fact that this is an international collaboration between the Longleys and us, British people and Americans. And so we were responsible for the sketch aspect of it, and we assembled some brilliant actors, Whit Spurgeon and Christopher Hatfield and Bill Pryor. These are guys that are kind of indie legends over here in Los Angeles. If you're in the LA area, you've worked with them, you've known them, or you've wanted to work with them. So it was a real coup to get them. But I talked to them when we were rehearsing it, that I didn't want to go, even though they were playing British characters, I didn't want them to lean into a British accent too much, because I wanted to preserve the fact that this was a co-production between British and Americans collaborating together. And I think that a lot of the comedy that you see on the more scholarly portion is the fact that the topic itself is so lighthearted, but also it has to do with Sir Paul Longley over here, that he's just so charming and easy to talk to, and he finds the lightness in pretty much everything in a really refreshing way.
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate that.
Yeah, you're very well, Your Highness.
You've been paid handsomely to play it.
Yeah, because also with our interview as well, we wanted to, like Abigail, who's our historian and museum curator, she was fantastic, and we wanted to make the chat quite lighthearted and more of a jovial conversation rather than a full-on interview. We didn't want it to be overly formal. We wanted to kind of, make it lighthearted, and we feel in those scenarios and in that kind of like having those, that's why we tailored the questions to be that way. We wanted it to be lighthearted, a conversation rather than just a formal interview. Like, right, what happened here? What happened here? We wanted just it nicely flow, and Abigail's fantastic, and it turned into a lovely conversation, and we were able to talk about the coffee shop and the history behind it, but also have a laugh of it at the same time, and because it is an absurd story, so it was quite fun to explore that.
Yeah. Speaking of the cast and some of the other folks there, the cast for this one is brilliant. The scholars have refined delivery with heavier English accents, and the researchers expressing more of a common language, kind of Downton Abbey meets Benny Hill. Let's start with the serious scholarly portion with Longley, and researcher Abigail Cornick.
Yep.
Rather is the anchor team for the show, isn't it?
Yeah, so we were doing loads of research into the subjects. Like we had Brian present the idea of the coffee shop, and I started researching into the idea and finding out a bit more about the coffee shop, where it was based, doing lots of research and read loads of articles, and that's where we came across one that was written by the museum. And so I looked into the museum, and then that is where the coffee shop was based. Then I rang up the museum, I got in touch with Abigail, and straight away the museum and Abigail are all interested in being part of it. So she is the museum curator for the Museum of the Order of St. John at Clerkenwell, which is this amazing building that's been there for hundreds and hundreds of years, and is the home of St. John's Ambulance, which is kind of like the first aid worldwide. And it's like amazing organization, but it's got this incredible history, which includes the coffee shop. Like there was certain part of the years where they sold off and rented off some of the rooms. So I went to meet Abigail beforehand. I obviously chatted to her over the phone, but I went to meet her in person, presented the idea, recce'd the location, saw where the coffee shop actually was. And yeah, she was fantastic. She knew all about the subject, obviously. She knew all about the history of the building. And then also she was able to relay with us the kind of social history of the time involving coffee shops. They were called penny universities because that's where people would go to converse and learn from one another, and a penny was the price of a coffee. So she was able to relay not only the history of the coffee shop, but the time. And she was absolutely fantastic, and really kind of lighthearted with her delivery as well. She didn't really need much direction at all, really, from my side. So we curated the questions specifically to make it lighthearted. And with Paul's interview style, it came across very fantastic. I think, hopefully.
Yeah, it was important because you're talking about, there's a lot of information to get across that is really interesting, and also pays great compliment to the sketch and brings the sketch up to another level. But it's about getting that balance of making sure, because you want to get that information out of someone and get that information across clearly to the audience, but without it being an absolute juxtaposition to the sketch they're about to see. If it's like a really dry interview and it's very serious, as interesting as that might be in terms of the facts, if you then cut to a sketch, it can actually then look like you are taking the mick out of the presenter, even, or of the curator and the historian, even though you're not. So it was very important to make sure we kept that level of where this is a very light-hearted chat where we're having a conversation, effectively. In fact, it's not really an interview. It really is a conversation. Having a conversation, a light-hearted conversation with a historian, and then showing the subject matter at the same time. And then the two just weave themselves in. The sketch makes the conversation funnier. The conversation makes the sketch funnier. It's about getting that balance.
Yeah, and if I can speak to the American side, Brian had originally come to this idea, and when I heard it, I loved it because it just opened so many possibilities, not for this, but even down the road, because there's so many things in history that you can look at as peculiar. And I think from our perspective with the sketch, I mean, we were trying to get, like, obviously the lampoonish part of it, but obviously trying to come up with ways how we can control the lighting, how we can control the set and make it look like it's that period. And of course, everything just kind of came together with Paul and James, and then bringing the actors that we had in there. It just it completed the whole process. It was one of the easier shoots we've had, actually, and that we've had at all. It's such a pleasure to do.
Yeah, I mean, people have often asked me, what the most challenging thing was on this. And I think that it's this part now, getting it into Dances with Films, which is such a massive festival, because in all the projects we've done together, Matt and I have worked together since about 2018 in earnest. And, you always have mishaps. You always have things that you're not expecting. But this one, honestly, I almost felt like, okay, I'm a little paranoid because nothing's going wrong. Everything's perfect, from the actors who I've already mentioned, to Paul and James. We had an Emmy-winning sound designer, Mark Hensley, come out for this. P. Woodruff, who is putting her name on every indie project in LA, come out just because they embraced it so much. And working with Matt to kind of create this whole world in the sketch. And just to be very clear, the historian and so forth, everybody's British on that side and everybody's American on ours. And so nobody's putting any accents on that they don't already have. And just to underscore also that the pilot episode is about a man. We keep talking about his coffee shop, but there's something very interesting about his coffee shop in that it's a Latin-speaking coffee shop. This is a man who, wanted to open a coffee shop and get everybody to speak Latin. So it was an odd idea. We thought, okay, what was he thinking? And in that way, it's kind of a love letter to the whole indie world itself, because everybody, Dances with Films is all about indie projects. Everybody here is an indie filmmaker. Everybody involved so far is in the indie space. And, indie is kind of code for we have no money and no contacts. And yet somehow we were able to create an international production and get it this far. And it's sort of like, oh my God, what happens now? What happens now we haven't been able to do before? And I also just want to shout out to Roman Falkenstein, who is our composer, also indie. So he's from Latvia, and so he composed and recorded the entire original score from there. And so it's really 3 countries if you really want to keep count.
Love it. So now for more down to earth players, Whit Spurgeon is fabulous as poor Richard Hogarth, and Christopher Hatfield is the perfect foil as Fred Henry. Is this an ensemble company that will appear going forward?
We're open to that. That's a level of discussion, because on the one hand, it's an anthology series. And so with every topic, it has different characters in it. But I think we'll have to see how it goes here. We've certainly got that door open. I know that we love these actors and we want to work with them as much as we possibly can. So any way that we can fit them into any future episode, we're going to do everything we can. It depends on what the needs of that episode are with different characters, because there's so many different types of eccentric people and odd things that have happened that sometimes doesn't involve, 2 guys in a coffee shop. So, yeah.
And what are your goals for this pilot? A full-on series, or maybe a feature?
Absolutely.
In the vein of, let's say, also in the vein of Mel Brooks' History of the World Part 2?
I think we're looking at the episodic route. That's really because there's so many things that, to do a feature of it, you'd have to blend all of these things together. But the common thing they have is that it's just eccentric people in different circumstances. So I think that it lends itself most to a series. So that's what we've got the focus on right now.
Okay, well, we're kind of winding down here, so I want to just thank you, gentlemen, for your time and your creativity on this project. I really thoroughly enjoyed it, and hopefully we'll see you in LA. And anything else you want to say? My next thing I was going to say is, how can our readers and viewers find out more about it? World Twistories, or find you and your other projects, whether it be your social media or any your websites, if you want to go around the room, the Zoom room, and give us your information.
Sure. We're at fancymovies818.com, and on Twitter it's at fancymovies. Go to the Dances with Films website. We are screening at the TCL Chinese Theater at 11 a.m. Saturday, June 29th.
I mean, literally everything Brian just said. If do a quick copy and paste of all that information, because that's exactly where you'll find everything to do with World Twistories, and that's where you need to go and see it. If you want to look at me personally, if you're into that sort of stuff, on Instagram it's Paul_Longley, and on TikTok it's Mr. Paul Longley. And then mine and James's stuff, separate from Brian and Matt, is oakmeadproductions.co.uk. But really, it's World Twistories. So go and go. That's what we're here for.
Yeah.
How about the other two?
Well, I'll throw in my personal one again. Paul hit it on the head with Brian saying everything about fancy movies and World Twistories. My personal one is at Matt's Film on Instagram.
And if you want anything more about Matt, I have some Polaroids of him that I can let go of.
Those are a secret. A secret.
Yeah, same as Paul, but our website's oakmeadproductions.co.uk, and my personal Instagram is at James Longlegram. Yeah.
Love it. Okay. We'll have all this and more at the Hollywood Times Official, which is our YouTube channel. The Hollywood.Times is our Instagram, and HollywoodTimes.net is our is the rest, is our website. So thank you so much for today. I had a lot of fun, and a lot of fun watching your creativity and your short. So
thank you, Valerie. This has been a delight. Truly.
Yeah, thank you so much, guys.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Lovely to meet you.
good flights in, and the rest of your day in LA. Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you.